With us now, senior congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, Andrew Desiderio, who has been in Maine recently covering this, and chief Washington correspondent at Puck, Leanne Caldwell. As always, I like to bring Puck and Punchbowl together. I call it a Puck Bowl panel. Thank you both for being with us. Andrew, I just want to start with you because you have been up there and kind of shift this from just a discussion about Maine to the larger question facing Democrats nationwide. As elected Democrats are being asked about this, they're being forced to consider whether or not they are going to find something like this. What scandals should be disqualifying? How are Democrats approaching this?
Well, we're going to find out a lot about Democrats' level of tolerance for these types of scandals. Obviously, there's been a lot that's already come out about Graham Plattner, but it seems to be, even 5 months out from the election, that this is going to continue to be sort of a drip of opposition research and other information coming out about him. But look, Maine is a critical state for Democrats. I mean, if they have any hope of taking back the Senate majority, they need to win in Maine. And so Democrats right now are putting all their effort behind sort of making sure they're unified behind Graham Plattner because he is their best and really at this point now their only shot at defeating Senator Susan Collins, someone who Democrats have not been able to defeat for election after election after election, and it's really frustrated them. And it's especially frustrated, by the way, Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer. So this is going to be a key race to watch, and it's going to be interesting to see how Democrats continue to react to what I think is going to continue to be this drip of information coming out about Graham Plattner's past.
And one of the questions, Leanne, is to what extent in 2026? What's a scandal in 26? How much is too much? And to what extent has President Trump changed the parameters of what is disqualifying in an election?
Yeah, John, he's absolutely changed it. I've talked to Democrats who are, Democratic voters and a couple Democratic aides who say that Trump has absolutely changed the dynamic. They say, well, what about Donald Trump? He was elected again after being convicted for sexual harassment or sexual assault. And then they point to Ken Paxton, who Republicans just elected to be their nominee in the Texas Senate primary last week. He has a long scandalous past. And so, that is one argument that some Democrats are making, that there seems to be a double standard between Republican candidates and Democratic candidates. But the fact is it matters in what specific race everyone is running in. As Andrew said, Maine has been a state that has been able to beat Democrats repeatedly ever since Chuck Schumer was DSCC chair several Susan Collins terms ago, since I think it was 2014, and he hasn't been able to beat Susan Collins yet. And with the political environment, this was looking like it was the best opportunity to do that. And now they have an extremely flawed candidate. And ultimately, it's those independent voters in Maine who are going to decide, especially those older female voters who really decide elections in that state.
Yeah, and of course, it's independent voters across the country who have turned so radically against Donald Trump. So it just is unclear how those two forces might battle each other. And of course, Donald Trump was found liable for sexual abuse in the case of E. Jean Carroll. He was convicted of the separate state crimes in New York. Be that as it may, Andrew, both you and Leanne, oh, no problem. Both of you guys wrote in the last 12 hours about the situation in the U.S. Senate. Right. And as Leanne put it, the lame duck-itis of President Trump. And Andrew, as you have put it, just these challenges to get his agenda through this week and how much greater of a challenge it is today than it might have been a few weeks ago. Without getting too much into the weeds of the bills here, just talk to me about that, Andrew.
Yeah, look, this is immigration enforcement funding. This is something that unites Republicans. It's a key agenda item of the president. It was on a glide path until, of course, this quote-unquote anti-weaponization fund was created as a result of that settlement from the president's lawsuit against the IRS for the unauthorized leak of his tax returns. And Republicans are at a moment right now where they're dealing with not only an unpopular president, but an unpopular president who continues to knock off some of their own colleagues. I'm referring, of course, to Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana and John Cornyn of Texas. And in the case of Senator Cornyn, leaving Republicans with a flawed candidate in Ken Paxton and having to spend hundreds of millions of dollars more in November just to keep a red seat red. So what Republicans are frustrated at, especially in the Senate, is that the president appears to be doing things that are directly against his own interests, not only stalling his own legislative agenda, but making it harder for Republicans to keep control of the Senate, which was supposed to be the sort of the quote-unquote safe chamber in this midterm year.